Hello, welcome to Life Matters. I'm your host, Brendan O'Connell. Well, today we have a very special guest who was one of the pioneers in getting ultrasound and used in pregnancy and across America with us. And she's been at it for quite some time. I'd like to read a little bit of her background for you before we chat with her. Her name is Shari Richard and is an obstetrical ultrasound expert and educator, and has medical experience spanning 34 years. In 1990, she founded Sound Wave Images, through which she produced videos Ultrasound, A Window to the Womb, and Eyewitness to the Earliest Days of Life. It's a very famous ultrasound video. Her 2D ultrasound footage has educated millions on prenatal development, as over 500,000 copies have been distributed, broadcast or translated worldwide. Her 2009 release of Windows and Eyewitness 2, The Next Generation, contains digital, 3D, and 4D ultrasound imaging. Her footage is internationally known as the best and has been viewed on commercial ads and in numerous national television shows. She's appeared on many shows throughout the country and lectured in schools and pregnancy centers and medical groups. Shari, in 1992, founded imaging network Diagnostic ultrasound program, where she pioneered and started her first medical ultrasound clinics in Southeast Michigan pregnancy centers. She's now implemented her success nationwide by providing ultrasound training for medical staff of pregnancy centers, of which there are many across the nation. As a result, Shari's personal grief of abortion, she has committed her life to share God's grace and love to change and heal hearts. She lives in West Bloomfield, Michigan, and has 3 sons. Well, welcome, Shari Richard.
Thank you.
Shari, tell us a little bit about your personal history. You yourself were a post-abortive woman. How did that all come about, and then how did it lead into the whole ultrasound thing?
Yeah, it was back in college days, around 1973. I was sexually active and became pregnant, and back then the doctor that did the abortion used the back alley technique, and it was like a 50cc syringe in a jar and 4 nurses to hold me down. And I suffered severe complications, but at that time I really didn't realize that it was a baby. And then I went into ultrasound school in 1982, and that's when I realized that it was more than a blob of tissue. And they would tell me to turn the monitors away from women considering abortion, and I just didn't understand why, if it's choice, and so I saved a lot of lives, but yet I was still post-abortive and grieving over the loss of my children that I aborted, and was told I couldn't have children. So as a last resort, I asked God to forgive me, to use my ultrasounds, and that month I conceived the first of my 3 boys, and my videos went around the world in all different languages. So it's amazing what God can do through mistakes if you give it to Him.
I see. Now, you have been promoting, and someone whom I had never heard of, a doctor who was involved in using ultrasound. Could you tell us a little bit about him, and then, or perhaps maybe we could run that video of Ian Donald first, and then maybe you could comment on it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Because ultrasound wasn't even really used for diagnostic purposes at the time of the Roe v. Wade decision. And here Ian Donald comes along and invents ultrasound, and now there's no debate. He always said if these women could see their babies on ultrasound, they would not choose an abortion. I remember I was called as my first speaking engagement to testify before the United States House and Senate on the Freedom of Choice Bill in 1990. And I showed the ultrasound, and I was shocked that they didn't want to see it. They wouldn't let me show the ultrasound as part of my testimony.
And why was that?
They said it wasn't relevant.
And I am here today to let you view for yourself without me trying to explain. Let you see the babies for themselves.
I'm afraid that the subcommittee is not going to permit VCRs.
Now, I know that the Democratic majority of this subcommittee has got the votes to gag Ms. Richard. And I would hope, Ms. Richard, after you're gagged by the majority in this subcommittee and complete your testimony, you move that videotape machine out into the hallway, and you can present out in that hallway what you were not allowed to present in here by the fiat of the chairman of this subcommittee who happens to disagree with your particular viewpoint and mine.
And the abortionist on the panel interrupted my testimony, and he said, "You're giving human characteristics to nothing more than an obligate parasite."
An obligate parasite. And no woman is required, no person is required to help anybody or any other person that in any way puts their life in jeopardy. And it is an obligate parasite. It cannot live on its own.
Do you believe it? I was like, I came this close to calling him an obligate parasite. I thought, what? What's making the baby move? I'm not making it move. It's jumping, it's waving. They didn't want to be shown the truth, just like Ian. When he went to show the ultrasound, they tried to keep it out. They tried to discredit him.
Anybody who says this is not alive is talking through his neck. It is a lie, which is intolerable, and seeing is believing. There can be no argument about it, and if I have done nothing else in my life, I have killed that dirty lie that the fetus is just a nondescript, meaningless jelly. Disposable at will, something to be got rid of.
So Shari, now we saw the video of Ian Donald and his remarks. Why is he a hero of yours?
You know, I didn't even know who he was until I did the research, and I realized the actual man that invented ultrasound was pro-life. And he had said that if only the people could see that it was more than a blob of tissue. And he would show the clips way back in 1970s of the babies moving and jumping to millions. And the government was furious because they didn't want to know the truth. And he continued to battle for life. And he was disgusted when he realized that his actual invention was being used to search and destroy. And he just prayed that God would raise somebody up to continue his battle, his fight. And I got a personal letter from him, and I knew that was my call. God had passed that mantle to me, and I started the ultrasound, and he's my hero.
I see. Well, we in the pro-life world, we thank God for ultrasound, because we know if the teenager or woman sees the ultrasound, there's a high probability that she'll keep the child. But you mentioned he was furious that the other side was using ultrasound as search and destroy. What do you mean there?
Well, ultrasound's used for life-saving means, and also used to look for an abnormality so the woman can choose to abort. And there's a lot of false positives that are related with these tests. And it's disgusting to see what I do in my field of how they look for abnormalities and then encourage the women to abort.
I see. I thought you were going to mention, because I know I've had on other folks that have worked in abortion clinics, and they've said that the abortionist actually uses the ultrasound. He doesn't let the woman see the ultrasound, but he uses it to perform the surgery where they, kill the child in the womb.
Well, and that's Bernard Nathanson. I saw the silent scream, and that's what convinced me that I had to get out there and speak life. Ultrasound's a valuable tool to inform women, and it's been my experience that when women see their baby and they're given the love and support, 90%, and that's not an exaggeration, will choose to keep that baby just by simply seeing the ultrasound.
I see. When you were first taking out the ultrasound around and showing people, what kind of reactions were you getting? And were people amazed, or were they in disbelief? Or what kind of reactions were you getting? And how did it catch fire that you've sold over 500,000 copies of your DVD?
Well, I believe it was the Lord, but because that was before the internet days, and I simply asked God to use me, and those were the days when people really didn't have routine ultrasounds, and that wasn't known back, as well as we know today. So I started collecting my images around 1985, and then in 1990, I just showed those little heartbeats at 4 weeks. When I testified in Congress, I was surprised at that reaction, that they didn't want to see it, and that the abortionist called the little 10-week baby jumping in the womb an obligate parasite, and that was just their mindset. They didn't want people to see that life, and so I made up my mind that I was going to take those ultrasounds wherever I went, and I know it's crazy, 500,000 around the world in 10 different languages and before internet days, but it made a difference.
Now, you have a company called Soundwave Images. What's the mission of Soundwave Images? What are you trying to do there?
It was basically to show ultrasound, to show life within the womb, and then to supply support and healing to women that are in crisis pregnancy. So I started the very first medical ultrasound clinic back in 1992 in Michigan. We raised money for an ultrasound machine, and now there's over 1,500 pregnancy centers utilizing the ultrasound. I started the first curriculum on training nurses on how to do the ultrasound, and it has just taken off once again. It's incredible. It's just, what's so amazing about it? It was like, I just simply asked God to use me. And not only did he heal my womb and heal my heart, but he actually did. I didn't think he could use little old me. I'm a nobody, and yet God can use anybody if you're willing to be used. And
now, do you think there's a correlation between the widespread use of ultrasound these days, of pregnant women seeing the ultrasound, and there are more and more people? Recent Gallup polls have shown more and more people are pro-life. Do you think there's a correlation there, or are you part of the puzzle, or all of the puzzle? How would you view your ultrasound success?
Well, it's not my success; it's the nation's success. It's the scientific information, but exactly right. The Gallup poll has showed that for the first time that the American people are in the majority of being pro-life, and they give credit to the pregnancy centers and ultrasound and education, and it's powerful. And then I think what else is happening is, because all the pregnancy centers are now offering ultrasound, and then also education and healing for women that have had abortion, those women are being raised up, and they're going out and sharing their testimony and sharing what their abortion did to them. And you can't refute the testimony of these women and men. And so I really believe that God is going to turn the Holocaust of abortion and use it for good as women and men in our nation open up their eyes and become healed and ask God to forgive us, because it's tremendous. It's a tremendous amount of babies being killed.
I see. Well, now we have another video. I think you entitled it Eyewitness 2, and would like to run that now and take a look at that, and then maybe you could comment on it.
Now this baby is George. Say hi to George. George is going to get ready to take a jump. To look at you, you can see his cute blue eyes. Her, she ended up being a girl, which I didn't know. This baby's actually dancing in the womb there.
Salsa.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm getting tired. So here's a kiss goodnight. Peace to all. Well, what do you think of those babies? Thumbs up! Yes! Okay!
Now, Shari, I see that ultrasound was played in front of a school audience. How was it received normally? Is it different for a religious school versus a public school?
You know, it's so incredible because the one that you just showed is Eyewitness 2, and that's doesn't address abortion or God isn't addressed in it, but it just shows ultrasound, fetal development, and I've been able to get, 5,000 plus of those DVDs into the schools, and the teachers love it because many of them cannot address abortion, but the babies speak life for themselves. And I believe that our target audience must be, this generation must be the schools, because they're the ones that are being sold the lie of abortion. And if we're going to turn this around, we have to get into the schools and educate. And it has been so well received. And if anybody wants anything to do, I believe that's probably what's going to make the biggest impact, getting these DVDs into the schools and educating our youth.
Is it harder for you to get them into public schools than religious type schools?
Nope, not at all. In fact, I've been in Michigan. I've been invited to the teacher conferences, and they have over 1,000 teachers there, and they all buy my videos. They love it. See, they just need the material to present it, and they can't present it in a religious format or in a pro-abortion format, but they can show the ultrasounds. And no, you just need to get it in there, and there's teachers in there that are just dying for this kind of information in both public and private.
See, now, you've gone from, I was watching one video of yours where you had ultrasound strips back in the old days, and now you've gone to 3D ultrasound and 4D ultrasound. Could you explain the difference? What is 3D ultrasound and what is 4D ultrasound?
Well, 3D ultrasound adds a third dimension to the 2D, and you can see the whole baby, just as it is, the face and the eyes. And the 4D adds the fourth dimension of movement, so you get the real-time movement. It's been used. It's amazing what we've been able to see now. You can see just so much detail, mainly used in the end of the second and early third trimester. But we've come a long way, and the resolution is continuing to improve.
I see. I think 4D is movement. Is that correct? Where you can see a shoulder shrug and.
Right, it's like the three-dimensional adding movement to it.
I see.
Correct.
Oh, very interesting. And now, as far as medical pregnancy centers, there's many what we call pregnancy help centers or crisis pregnancy centers in the United States. In fact, they far outnumber abortion centers these days. And yet they're being attacked by the abortion industry saying, well, you folks are not medical. And how does the whole ultrasound sonography equation fit here? Do you need a technician, an ultrasound technician, to be at these pregnancy help centers to operate them? And is that quite a bit of a cost? How does that work?
Well, ultrasound is operated dependent, so it is something that you have to be trained to do. I have developed a curriculum that is called for limited ultrasound for pregnancy centers, where we train them to show the heartbeat and to measure the baby to see how far along she is. And then they need to get something like 50 to 70 scans to get efficient at doing that. And what we have found, and this is very interesting, is because the increased rate of abortion and STDs, we are seeing an increased rate of miscarriages. So I'm going to tell you this number, and it's going to blow you away, but it's 40% of conceived pregnancies will end in miscarriage in those first few weeks of pregnancy, and that's between the 6th and the 10th week. And we're finding those pregnancies, those abnormal pregnancies with ultrasound, and we can tell the girl, you don't even have to consider an abortion. You are going to miscarry on your own. And that is another advantage of having this information in the pregnancy centers, because the abortionist would not tell the girl that. If she comes in and they don't see a heartbeat and she's going to miscarry anyhow, they're not going to tell her, and they're going to take her money and do an abortion. And how many women have had abortions that didn't even have a baby to abort, and they're suffering the guilt complications as a result of it? This is why this has to get out there. This is why we have to legislate information like this.
So are you saying that because of the preponderance of sexually transmitted diseases, I believe the teenage girls are 4 times more likely to have a sexually transmitted disease than get pregnant? And is it because of the sexually transmitted diseases that they are having children that are miscarriages?
It's a combination of repeat abortions, STDs, birth control, the lifestyle. 25 years ago, it was 30% miscarriages. But because of the combination of the increased rate of STDs, ectopics, chlamydia, repeat abortions, and plus the earlier detection of pregnancy tests. We can establish a positive pregnancy test almost a week after conception now. And because of all that together, we're getting a rate of 40 to 50% increase of miscarriages now. And that is why these girls need to have an ultrasound before even making a decision of abortion, to see if her pregnancy is even viable.
Wow, that's really something, and very important to know.
Yeah, and most people don't know this.
Yeah.
And
Now,
this is what I do when I go into centers. I train them on how to establish a normal pregnancy from a threatened miscarriage.
well, Shari, and now you have a website, a Vimeo website. Could you just explain what that is for folks that would like to find out more about your whole ultrasound operation?
Well, you can go on unborn.com, and that's my website. And on there, you'll have a number of links. I have a Vimeo link. You can see all my Vimeo ultrasounds, all my videos, and you can actually share them with friends. And that's the best way, is use this technology and this information out. And then I have another website called unbornultrasound.org, where I provide ultrasound machines for the pregnancy centers at a discount price. So
I see. Well, Shari, Rashad, we really appreciate your coming on the show today and explaining what it's like to have been walked the walk on ultrasounds through 30 some odd years, and where you are today, and all the good that you're doing for our young people and in their teens, 20s, 30s that are pregnant. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for your ministry.
well, thank you for all you're doing too, and we're just going to have to keep fighting until we end this abortion holocaust. So thank you for what you're doing.
Very well, Shari.
All right. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's show and you found it unique, informative, content-rich, truthful, and thought-provoking. Stay tuned next week as we have another exciting show of Life Matters. Take care. We'll see you next week.